Kevin had never slept away from home before. He was just 12 years old. When his parents left him at the school gate, he felt something in his chest, like fear wrapped in silence. The dorm smelled like old wood, wet socks, and sadness. He missed his mom's hug. Her soft voice. Her food. At night, the lights went out. But the fear didn't. The dorm was quiet, but not safe. Kevin heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. A shadow stopped at his bed. It was a senior boy. He leaned close and whispered, "Don't scream." Kevin froze. His small hands clutched the blanket. He wanted to cry for help. But his voice got lost in his throat. That night, the senior hurt him. Touched him in places no one should. Kevin cried, but only inside. The other boys looked away. They had seen this before. No one helped. No one ever helped. The next morning, Kevin smiled for the teacher. But inside, a part of him was already gone. There was a secret group in the school. Not written in books. Not known to parents. But every boy knew. They called it tradition. But it was something darker. New boys were forced to kneel. Crawl. Sometimes naked. They were beaten with belts, sticks, wires. Made to clean dirty toilets with bare hands. Some were made to do even worse, shameful things that left them crying in corners. The seniors called it making men. But it didn't feel like manhood, it felt like punishment for being young, soft, innocent. One boy, Dennis, tried to fight back. They locked him in the shower overnight. He begged. He cried. But in the morning, no teacher asked why his hands were bleeding or why his eyes were red. They said nothing. Because they knew. They all knew. And the silence, that was the loudest part of it all. Michael was quiet, polite, and gentle. He had never been in a fight. Never shouted. But at boarding school, that made him a target. Every day, he was bullied. Beaten. Touched. Mocked. Called names that made him feel like nothing. He wrote letters to his mom every Sunday. But one letter was different. It said, "Mom, please come get me. I'm not okay. They are hurting me." He hid the letter under his mattress, planning to give it to the postman. But the dorm master found it. He read it. Laughed. Then burned it. "Don't be weak," he told Michael. "Boys don't run home crying." After that, Michael changed. He stopped writing. He stopped eating. He stopped speaking. His eyes were always wet, but he never cried. Because at boarding school, crying meant you'd be broken more. Michael was still alive. But inside, he was already gone. Mr. Karanja had been teaching at the school for 12 years. He was strict. Cold. Always holding a cane. He said, "I am raising men, not cowards." But he was also raising silence. He saw boys limping. He saw bruises on backs. He heard screams in the night. But he did nothing. When a boy came to report abuse, Mr. Karanja laughed. "Go play. You'll be fine." He walked into the dorm once, found a boy tied to the bed. The seniors told him it was a joke. He nodded. Walked out. Closed the door. The teachers were not blind. They were not deaf. They were simply uncaring. And that made them part of the abuse too. Because silence is not innocence. It is betrayal. James had a friend named Brian. They shared a bed during cold nights. Shared stories about home. About dreams. About food they missed. Brian always smiled, even when the seniors hit him. But one morning, Brian didn't wake up. James found him hanging by a belt tied to the window. A note was in his pocket. "I can't take the pain anymore." James screamed. He cried loudly in the chapel. But a teacher pulled him aside and whispered, "Stop crying. Boys don't cry." They buried Brian quietly. No counselor. No assembly. No one said his name again. They just cleaned his bed, brought a new mattress, and life moved on. But James couldn't move on. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Brian's face. Smiling, then gone. By Form 4, the boys had learned not to speak. Not to feel. Not to cry. They had become hard, not strong. Just numb. The things they saw, the things they went through, lived inside them like ghosts. One boy, Daniel, beat others just to feel powerful again. Another, Sam, never talked about his past, only fought anyone who came close. They were hurting, but they showed it with fists instead of tears. They laughed when others got beaten. Because laughing was safer than crying. They had been taught that pain was normal. That abuse was how boys grow. But deep down, they were still the same scared boys who came to school with soft hearts and were forced to turn cold. At the end of the term, the bell rang. Parents arrived with gifts, hugs, and big smiles. The boys looked healthy. Neat. Happy. But it was all a mask. Their real wounds were inside, the ones that don't bleed. The ones you can't see in photos. Kevin hugged his mother tightly. But he couldn't tell her what really happened. How he was touched. Hurt. How he cried alone in the dark. She wouldn't understand. Or maybe, she wouldn't believe him. So he stayed quiet. Just like the others. They went home with bags full of books, and hearts full of pain. Behind the dorm doors, many boys were broken. And even when they left, the pain came with them.